Hi everyone, good afternoon. I'm very aware I've got the after lunch session, which is usually the yawning session for everyone, but hopefully I'm going to be able to inspire you and leave you today with some really practical ideas for you to take forward, either in your agencies, with your clients, or within your own business. So, when I first started working in sustainability, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, it wasn't the all-encompassing thing that it is now. It was still quite niche. It was rare for businesses to have a sustainability team, for example, and certainly not a chief sustainability officer. But now we see sustainability as an absolute business imperative. And that's being driven by a few areas. The first one is around legislation and policy. I think still the biggest driver of change with businesses today. So here in Singapore, for example, we've seen the launch of the government's Green Plan, and we've seen new legislation and policies being rolled out, which are really there to mandate companies to become more sustainable and think about their actions going forward. We're also seeing that pressure is coming in from consumers and external stakeholders. So, people are starting to think twice about the companies that they deal with, they interact with, who they buy from. I don't think it's the biggest driver yet, but it's certainly coming down the track. Then you have investors. Investors are increasingly looking at ESG scores within companies. How are companies managing their environmental, their social, and their governance elements around sustainability? And then finally, a group that we're going to talk about today that I think are probably one of the most influential drivers of change, and that's employees. Particularly younger employees want to work for companies who are doing the right thing, who are trying to be better businesses. So they're looking to take care of the people who work for them. They're looking at their supply chain and the companies that they're getting products and services from. Are they treating their people right? They're looking at where they're sourcing products and ingredients and services. And they're looking at how they treat the environment. So these things are going to become increasingly important to employees. And employees have a massive role to play in the success of any sustainability strategy. So I want to share with you, this is a chart from Proci, and Proci are a very well-known change management process, and I've used them quite a lot in past projects and with past clients. And what this diagram tells you isn't rocket science. As individuals, as humans, most of us don't really like change. And often sustainability is exactly that. It's a change management program within a business. And what we find with change is that even from the first word that goes out about a particular change, or even a rumor, that people will react to that change, and there will be resistance, and that will disrupt productivity within a business. And the level of resistance and the disruption to productivity will vary across business units, across business hierarchies. So it's really important that you can get to grips with this pretty quickly. This is also a model that Proci uses called the ADKAR model. And you can see here that really what ADKAR is saying is that successful change is always driven by communications. From making people aware of the changes to come, encouraging them to get involved in making those changes happen, helping them to feel equipped to take on those changes by providing them with the knowledge and the actions that they need to take to change behavior or acquire skills, and all the way through to reinforcing and sustaining those changes. I believe that any corporate sustainability strategy is doomed unless employees are taken on the journey, because it's only through successful engagement can you hope to accelerate and sustain progress of cultural and operational change. By encouraging a sense of community and collaboration, so a belief that we're all in this together, encouraging employees to play an active role in sustainable change, seeing the results of those actions, and really galvanizing employees to become advocates and ambassadors for those changes. And through this very close and inclusive engagement, really strengthening loyalty and retaining much needed talent, which, as we all know, is very difficult and getting harder. It's important to recognise that employee engagement is not the same as internal communications. The latter is a means to an end, and the former is an outcome of good internal comms. Successful employee engagement is always inclusive and targeted, whereas sometimes with internal comms, it has to be a catch-all solution. And that could be because of the size of the organization and the different levels and hierarchies that you're talking to. But most internal comms departments do not have the bandwidth to be able to do very targeted comms. There's also a dynamism and an action-driven feel behind good employee engagement, when often internal comms can feel quite passive and sometimes is only really simply conveying information. This is a diagram that I like to share, and we use this in a lot of conversations with clients when we talk about employee engagement. And if you think about your own company, or indeed your clients, where would they be on this engagement scale? Sometimes when we start talking to clients, they are of the belief that they're near the top. But actually, once we start to do a bit of digging, and we start to survey and talk to the employees within that organization, what we find is that most clients tend to be at the lower end of the curve when it comes to their company's sustainability strategy or commitments, simply because many of them have just recently embarked on sustainable change. And quite often they're so focused on how to communicate their plans with external stakeholders that little has really been done with employees. It's important to note that reaching the top of that curve is definitely a marathon and not a sprint. It takes time to change behaviors and mindsets, and many sustainability actions can take a while to put in place, work on, and then eventually see the impact. So what I'm going to take you through today is my 5 principles for successful employee engagement around sustainability. And just wanted to show you this as a consideration, that many people are still confused by that word, sustainability, which leads me into my first principle, avoiding the S word. What you should be thinking is thinking about, what does sustainability actually mean for your company or client? What is material to their business and its customers when it comes to sustainability? So for example, if you're a manufacturing company, you might be looking at your packaging and your supply chain. For an agency, maybe it's about your use of energy in the office, your use of paper, and certainly for any company, it should be how you're treating your workforce and how you're dealing with suppliers. Because if you can't find a connection between a sustainability action and what employees do every day, you really struggle to get them on board. As I mentioned before, the S word itself is off-putting. So what is the sustainability narrative or story behind what you're trying to change? We all know as communicators that great storytelling is one of the best ways of getting people interested and involved. Which brings us on to messaging. How is your business structured? What are the key changes you're going to make to make it more sustainable? And what are you hoping to achieve? And make sure that those messages are jargon-free and relatable. There's nothing worse than sustainability jargon, as in any industry or with any issue. And engagement can't just be one way, it must be across the business. Of course, leadership commitment and buy-in is crucial in helping to establish a roadmap for change and also to galvanize employees to want to be part of that change. But equally important is ensuring that employees at every level, in every department, feel included, are consulted, and then feel able to contribute to the changes that a business wants to make. I can't overemphasize how important this principle is if you want to build trust and belief across the workforce. Sustainability is a topic where honesty and transparency are key, because it's often a complex journey with just as many moments of frustration as success. And often you take one step forward and have to take 2 steps back. And if you want to maintain credibility with employees and ensure motivation and enthusiasm for the task at hand is sustained, then you have to admit when something goes wrong. And by doing this, you might just be surprised with a solution to the problem from an unlikely source within the business. And at the very least, as a company, you're showing humility and that you've got a grasp of reality. This is never an easy process for a company to go through. Saying that, do make sure that you celebrate when you achieve a milestone, no matter how small, because seeing changes that have an impact is enormously motivating and will help spur people on and keep them moving forward, even when there are setbacks. Great employee engagement doesn't just involve the internal comms or HR teams. A holistic and inclusive approach will encourage people to get creative, come up with great ideas, and come together to address challenges together. So encourage people to engage not only with their peers in their own departments or in their own teams, but also with colleagues in other parts of the company. And don't dictate how and when to engage. Take time to find out how people communicate and come together within an office or a hybrid environment when left to their own devices, and use those insights to create engagement activities and approaches that will work. But also be ready to let go. As people become more knowledgeable about the company's sustainability plans, they'll become more confident about expressing ideas or concerns or collaborating around challenges. One thing you could think about is developing an ambassador program within the business, which really helps encourage collaboration and idea sharing, as long as those ambassadors are at every level and in every department of the business. Internal communications are key to helping deliver effective employee engagement. And going back to my point about avoiding the S word and telling your own unique sustainability story, this should form the basis for all of your engagement communications. Use your own company voice. Don't resort to sustainability jargon because it will turn people off. And be clear on what you want to achieve as an organization and make this your North Star. So are you aiming to be carbon neutral by 2030? Are you looking to go plastics free by 2025? One point I want to make about this is it's okay to be big and bold with your North Star, but make sure that in your messaging and in your actions that you're clearly communicating how this will be achieved, by who, and by when. Know the people you're trying to engage with. How do they like to be communicated with? What works best based on past experience? You may not know this, or it might be a while since you've surveyed employees. So maybe try a few different methods of engagement to find what works, and don't be too rigid. Have some fun with it. Remember the need to be inclusive here, so consider the demographics of your workforce and also their geographical and office location. So for example, it's no good communicating just by WhatsApp if some of your employees are in a factory environment and they don't have their phones to hand. And it's easy to think that you need to be constantly pumping out information and calls to action to get people engaged and motivated. This isn't the case at all. In fact, too much communication too often will mean people will stop listening and they'll switch off. So choose your moments to communicate carefully. My suggestion would be that you align your communications and engagement strategy to your sustainability roadmap or milestones. Vitally important for successful employee engagement around sustainability, and therefore the success of a company's sustainability strategy, is being able to answer the "what's in it for me" question. As humans, we are inherently selfish, and we all have a lot of stuff going on at work, at home. So successful engagement has to demonstrate how and why a change, whether it's cultural, operational, or behavioral, is going to be beneficial to the individual. Having that buy-in from the C-suite or leadership team is crucial in demonstrating that commitment is there at the top and that there is an expectation that it will be replicated throughout the organization. Top-down communication engagement will be crucial for this point to be made properly. Employees also need to recognize that customers, suppliers, and other stakeholders are demanding that the company becomes more sustainable. And these demands must be addressed if the business wants to remain viable in the future and therefore be able to continue employing people and paying them a salary, Because at the end of the day, that's what a sustainable business is. It's a business that is fit for business in the future. Employees also need to feel part of any sustainable changes, and ownership of certain actions should be encouraged. There's no reason why every single employee cannot be part of the change needed, whether it's something small, like pledging to turn off all power sources when they leave the office, or more substantial action, like working together to develop a sustainable supplier policy. By contributing towards a shared goal or ambition, that North Star that I mentioned earlier, employees will grow in confidence when their actions have a sustainable impact. And finally, consider how employees can benefit from getting involved. As well as the feel-good factor generated by achieving success, we all need to be motivated through incentive. And this could be in the form of extra annual leave days, it could be recognition as part of the appraisal process, and therefore directly linked to salary increases or promotion opportunities, or maybe the opportunity to experience different parts of the business or spend time in different geographical locations. So to finish my session, what I'd like to do is share some examples of companies who I think have really great employee engagement approaches around sustainability. My first example is Meta and their Green Teams. This is a community of individuals across business units and markets all over the world who are passionate about sustainability and what it means both to them as an employee of Meta and them as individuals. And becoming part of a green team gives you access to training on sustainability topics, material to Meta, and it also encourages collaboration and innovation to dream up and develop solutions. And really importantly, cross-collaboration. So cross-collaboration across different business units, but also different geographical locations. The company also hosts its own sustainability-focused annual events, which are accessible company-wide. And I love what Meta is doing because it helps build awareness and knowledge around sustainability across the business, as well as encouraging different business units and markets to work together to find solutions to some of the sustainability challenges that Meta faces. My second example comes from Marks & Spencer in the UK and their Plan A champions. Plan A is the company's long-term change management program. And so it's imperative that employees are on board with the plan's objectives. So what M&S have done is created a network of Plan A champions, and these are volunteers whose job it is to inspire their peers and customers alike to consider a more sustainable way of living and consuming. So a sense of ownership is encouraged, as is healthy competition, because there are champions in every store, and every champion must report on actions and progress. So I love that measurement and progress measurement is being brought down to a grassroots level. Such a great way to get people inspired and involved. The company also provides a suite of communications assets, and they're available to the champion network. And that means that from a corporate perspective, there's consistency in messaging across the board. And it also makes it very easy to update those assets when changes happen or progress is made. My next example is Unilever. So a few years ago, Unilever announced at Davos that it would stop using stereotypes in its advertising. A really noble commitment to make externally, but could they be sure that their employees were aware of the intention and also how it might affect what they do in their jobs? Was there a level of understanding of how the unconscious bias in all of us might influence how they engaged with peers or made work decisions? So to grow awareness of Unilever's unstereotype intentions and to educate its workforce, the company launched a global program of online quizzes and interactive videos to encourage employees to take a moment and think and test their own unconscious bias. This was complemented by a global panel event with high-profile speakers from within and outside of Unilever to help shine a light on this issue and how it does influence us every day, whether we're aware of it or not. The campaign helped develop internal alignment and understanding towards Unilever's external commitment to unstereotype its ads, helping employees better understand the role they could play in ensuring internal culture was aligned with external corporate commitments. And my final example is Epson Southeast Asia's Be Cool campaign. The company was keen to help its employees understand what sustainability means to Epson as a business and how they have a role to play in not only helping Epson's customers and business partners better understand the benefits of the company's sustainable product range, but also how they as individuals can consider adopting a more sustainable lifestyle. The Be Cool campaign, so named to draw attention to the need for energy conservation in an increasingly warming world, had at its heart a series of employee events in each market in Southeast Asia, where employees could find out more about Epson and sustainability, and where they could pledge to also adopt more sustainable practices, both in the office and in home. The events helped to make sustainability more accessible, more understood, and more relevant to Epson's people and what they were doing every day. And it really encouraged them to consider their own behavior and actions, as well as what it means for Epson in a corporate context. So I hope those case studies have inspired you to think about ways in which you can really meaningfully engage with your employees. And I hope that those principles give you a starting point for thinking about how you frame your employee engagement projects and work. And it just leaves me to say thank you, and good luck to any of you who are up for Sabre Awards later tonight. Thank you.